Hi, welcome to day 4, module 4 of how to buy your first rental property in Cleveland, Ohio in 26 and 27. So today we're talking about the right investment strategy. And there's many investment strategies, by the way. We're only going to talk about 3 and really just 2, but I'll explain. But before we go there, there's a number of advanced strategies. I would call them advanced. They don't have to be advanced. You just have to learn about them. And they're all their unique niche. You can invest in commercial properties, retail, factories, all sorts of stuff, right? And they all have you can make a lot of money. You can buy boat slips and rent them out, and ones with businesses in them and run the business too. And you can buy luxury houses. Frankly, in terms of real estate type of opportunities, you can flip houses. Again, we're only talking about like longer term investments. But you can do all of these things. A big one these days is Airbnbs or short-term rentals, STRs as they call them, STR, short-term rental. So you can do that as a whole different business. And those end up adding a lot of extra layers to real estate as a business. And so probably it's best to get in a little simpler, but if it fits you, any of these things could make sense. People even buy large storage unit complexes, and they have a whole business around that, or large apartment communities, or office condos, or buying large apartment buildings and then subdividing them into condos and reselling them, right? The list goes on and on. I see people buy and sell vacant lands and create businesses around buying and holding large swaths outside suburbs and then waiting until the development comes years later. And again, a lot of what we talk about in terms of leverage, how to work things, examples and things like that, it's not always more complicated, usually requires a lot more money, a lot harder to leverage on these things, and a lot of really specific niche knowledge and experience in mentorship. So any of those can be done. I'm not saying they can't. What we're here to talk about is like a single family or small rental property in Cleveland, Ohio. Something that there's whole sets of processes to help you with. There's a clear market and just a great place to start. Something that, frankly, people are always going to need too. So there tends to be less swings in the market in terms of demand. And so that's why we're doing that. So within that category of rental properties, residential, single to like 4 units, you could have basically 2 or 3 categories. And so the first would be turnkey. And what turnkey simply means is that you can buy this property. It already has a tenant in it. It's assumed that it's well maintained, generally if you call it turnkey, but has a tenant in it, and literally you turn the key and money comes out. That's the idea, okay? And so there's typically a lower upside because it's considered that there's less risk. I don't always consider that because I find that having a tenant in a property makes it hard to inspect. There's unknowns. We've seen tenants in the properties that represent large risks, which we never knew because we didn't get to personally screen that tenant. We've also seen where a turnkey provider, now you can buy turnkeys on the MLS all day long, but we've done a lot of work with turnkey providers who buy, fix, fill it with a tenant, and then sell it as an investment. And we saw like turnkey providers literally pay someone to move in, forge a lease, claim they were getting payments and had been for a certain amount of history, sell it as such, and it was a total fraud, right? So that can happen too. And normally it's some variation lower of that, but there's always a few extra unknowns about a person. Are they really who you said what they were alleged to be in terms of a great paying tenant? And sometimes the numbers even that appear to be happening or that are supposed to be happening, they hide liabilities. So I'm not a huge fan of just jumping to a turnkey property. I think that you can make money on them and they work for some people. And then on bigger pockets, I believe they coined the term BRRR or buy right, renovate or rehab right, and refinance right. And so they call it BRRR. So, and that's more of a renovation where you buy the house in some form of distressed status. If nothing else, there's no tenant in it. So it's vacant, right? And then it may need large renovation. It might need light renovation. So I have a category like light rehab. So sometimes the rehab might be so light that it doesn't make sense to buy with cash, renovate it, and then refinance it. It's just, you bought it straight up, put a % down, and did a very light rehab. So that's somewhere between BRRRR and turnkey would be what I call the light rehab. Okay, so you're not going to be able to, the gold standard, the idea, what you're going for with a BRRRR, a full BRRRR, is that you bought it good because it was distressed, so good that you had 20% equity by the time you fixed it and put a tenant in it, all money included, right? So let's say you bought it for 50, put 20,000 into it and had other costs of about 10,000, so 30,000 costs, and now there's a tenant paying you monthly, and so you're all in for $80,000, and you can get all or pretty close to or most of your money back at that 80% rate. So you can get a DSCR loan. And that a DSCR loan is just, and we'll talk about the different kinds of financing options, but a DSCR is just a recent loan product in the last few years that's come out that is focused entirely on the income of the property and the equity of the property itself, less about the assets of the borrower. And usually there does look at least some credit profile of the buyer, but it's a minor loan application oftentimes a very quick loan application without a full underwriting review of the borrower. So you as a borrower, especially as a new property owner, they're going to be looking at a DSCR loan more as the income of the property and the equity in that property. And so because of that, if you can get cash or enough money one way or the other, and in a moment we'll talk a little bit more about that, variations of the BRRRR method, but if you can get a little bit more, if you can get the cash to get all that stuff done, and then all of that cash is returned to you when you refinance, you can do that over and over again. And it starts to seem, or at least on paper, like an infinite money machine. Now, the truth is, if it was an infinite money machine, there would be an awful lot more wealthy people in real estate. There are issues that come up. Number one is Cleveland contractors are terrible. They're just known for it. I'm telling you, it's a big deal. To this day, we're constantly revolving through people that do maintenance, both internally in our team and contractors outside, okay? Because top retail contractors that you wouldn't revolve like that will basically take all the equity that you thought you were gonna make. And there's a lot of different ways once you get experience to do it. But in the end result is even if you don't do the repairs personally on the property, there's going to be a cost to managing the level of dysfunction that happens in the field in general, in the chaos, right? And so you have to factor that in a little bit to your decision making and how you're thinking about that, thus the conversation now. So it's not exactly an infinite money machine, but basically the idea is if you have a $100,000 property and you can buy it for cheap and put all those costs in it, you can finance the entire amount of money, both the purchase price and the cost in the refinance. And that's really it. And so you just have to back it off when you're making offers. And frankly, some of the better deals are through wholesalers. And we'll talk about how to find these properties in future modules. So one more thing is that there are different ways to get cash for those renovations and to buy it when it's not quite ready and it's a little bit distressed, because even a DSCR lender, when there's no income and it's distressed, is not going to give you a DSCR product that's based on income and equity until it's actually having income, right? So some of those same DSCR lenders offer hard money programs and make easy refinances. There are some programs like that. There are private hard money lenders. There's a bunch of different ways of handling that, but just know if you're borrowing the money, whether you're taking it off an equity line or else, you have to factor in the cost of that money. And on hard money, which typically is like 8% to 18%, I remember pre-2007, 2008, when it was a bubble, money was flowing so much, and the expense on hard money was, I think something like for some people, it was like 10 points off the top just to get the hard money. So right off the top, 10% was paid to the person who brokered the hard money loan deal. And then you were paying interest rates, normally with prepayment penalties and all these other things. And interest rates were like 15 to 18 all day long. Thankfully, thank God, we're not living in that era. Today, 15% would be on the high side, and it's common to find what would be still classed as hard money, but through corporate sources, so not private sources. You're seeing hard money sometimes as low. I've seen like what would still be called quasi-hard money at like 7 to 8%. Again, if you're going through private sources, and there's private and then like quasi-private. So like if you have a friend, like a doctor or high-income individual, attorney, has some extra money, doesn't have time, and you want to get hard money from them. Oftentimes you can get with an attorney that does a mortgage and writes it all up for you and creates a nice, clean legal arrangement. You can make that all happen. It's not so bad, but just recognize hard money or renovation money typically is higher risk for the lender. Therefore, they charge you more because there's no income there. And there's a lot of unknowns about what could be found, getting stuck. What happens if the project gets stuck or there's unknown expenses? Is it going to become a problem of the lender? There's all those issues that entail risk for the lender. They charge a lot more. So the more that you can put that risk 100% on yourself with your own cash or cash, say, off an equity line, you can control the cost. Or qualify for a more of like a corporate type private lender, like a quasi corporate money. And you can oftentimes lower the cost a lot. But anyways, regardless of how you get the money, if you can get all those costs in there at 80%, you have yourself a pretty awesome opportunity to renovate that and make it all work. So thank you for listening to this session of Module 4 on getting the money ready and the different types of investing in Cleveland landlording. You probably knew about that, but I hope you learned something. I want to talk a little bit more about lenders in the next module. So look to see you tomorrow doing that. Thanks again for watching. And again, if you have any interest in taking current properties that you might have and upgrading property management, then we're your guys. Feel free to schedule in the link on this video to talk with somebody on that and see if that might be a fit, as well as make sure, as always, ask any questions you had about this video, either right in this video or in the text message and or email that this video was sent to you. Ciao.